I wasn't supposed to be home that early. Normally, I work nights, 12-hour shifts, sometimes longer depending on the system load. The plant doesn't sleep, and neither do the schedules. But that particular Thursday, a transformer blew out 2 towns over, and the grid had to be manually rerouted. We got the all clear just past 3:15 a.m. and I figured I'd call it a night and beat the sunrise home. No text to Becky. No heads up. Just a quiet plan to swing by Tony's diner and grab her usual turkey sausage wrap, hash browns, and a side of those little jam packets she hoards in the pantry. Felt good doing something for her. Lately, our routines had gone bone dry. We still talked, still laughed sometimes, but not the way we used to. That spark you feel when someone looks at you like you're still interesting, that had started to dim, and I chalked it up to life being life. Stress, work, bills. Same song, different decade. When I opened the door, the place was quiet. Not weirdly quiet, just that soft hum of a sleeping apartment. Fridge buzzing, streetlights leaking through the blinds, the occasional creak from the hallway radiator. Her keys were on the table, her purse draped over the side chair like she'd dropped it and forgotten. Shoes by the mat. Everything normal. But then I heard it. Ping. A soft notification chime. I turned toward the living room, confused. Becky's laptop was open, something she never does. She's religious about shutting it down every night, double-checking that every tab is closed and every window cleared. Paranoid, almost. I used to tease her for it. The screen showed a file in the downloads folder. Clip final. Wave. No context. Just sitting there. Still, I almost didn't open it. I don't go through her stuff. We're not that kind of couple, or we weren't. But something about the way it was just sitting there, like bait left in the open, drew me in. I double-clicked. The audio crackled for a second, like it had been recorded on a cheap mic or maybe a phone tucked inside someone's jacket. A man's voice came first, not one I recognized. Mid-30s maybe, a little rough like he smoked or stayed up late a lot. "You know we didn't start all this for nothing," he said. Then a pause. Then Becky's voice. Clear, steady, eerily calm. "Marriage is just a profitable deal. I don't have to play the role to the end." I froze. It was like getting slapped in the face by someone you didn't even know was in the room. I stood there, jaw half open, trying to convince myself I'd heard it wrong. Maybe it was a joke, a weird skit, a prank, something ripped from a podcast or one of those murder mystery shows she binges while doing laundry. But no, that was her voice. I knew that cadence, the slightly clipped tone she gets when she's trying to sound like she's above emotion. And it didn't sound like acting. It sounded like she was saying something she believed. The words circled in my head like flies. Marriage is just a profitable deal. I stared at the screen for another few seconds, hand hovering over the trackpad, not sure if I should replay it or delete it or just pretend I never heard it at all. That's when she walked out. She must have heard me come in, or maybe she didn't. Maybe she was already up. Either way, she came out of the bedroom rubbing her eyes, messy bun, oversized t-shirt. She looked like someone who'd been sleeping, but something in her expression told me otherwise. She saw the screen, then my face, and she didn't even blink. "Oh," she said, not missing a beat. "That? It's for Casey's podcast." I was helping her draft a scene, like a character monologue thing. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. My brain was trying to load words like an old computer stuck buffering. Becky took a step forward, then leaned against the doorway like I was the one acting strange. "You look like you just saw a ghost," she added. "It's not even finished yet." I was going to re-record it in a better tone. "Why are you so mad?" That sentence. "Why are you so mad?" Like she was testing whether I'd fall for the first explanation she tossed out. No panic. No apology. Not even a trace of guilt. Just calm, collected Becky, the version of her that knew how to control a room. I must have looked like a deer in headlights. I hadn't even processed how much my hands were shaking until I heard my own voice, barely above a whisper. "That didn't sound like a script." She shrugged. "Well, it wasn't finished. It's supposed to sound natural." Then she walked over, shut the laptop slowly, not in a rush, and started heading toward the kitchen. No flinch. No fluster. "I'm gonna make coffee," she said over her shoulder. Like that whole moment hadn't just knocked the wind out of me. You want any? I didn't answer. I stood there for a good 2 minutes after she disappeared down the hallway, trying to decide if I was overreacting. But that line, "I don't have to play the role to the end," was etched into my skull like graffiti on a bathroom mirror. You can try to wipe it off, but it's still there. I walked into the kitchen a few minutes later. She was already on her phone, scrolling, sipping from the yellow mug I got her in Asheville 2 summers ago. The same one that said, "Wife life. Everything okay?" she asked casually. I nodded. Or maybe I didn't. I can't even remember. All I know is that something small, something silent, cracked inside me that morning. Nothing dramatic. No fight. No yelling. Just that quiet snap when something you've been leaning on gives out beneath your weight. A fracture no one sees at first. But from that moment on, I started paying attention. The way she turned her phone face down when I walked in. The time she said she had a Zoom call at midnight because West Coast clients. The second toothbrush that appeared in our bathroom. A brand I don't use. Little things. Things I used to explain away because I trusted her. Or maybe because I wanted to. But now, every detail had a different weight. Every word felt rehearsed. Every kiss on the cheek started to feel like punctuation at the end of a sentence she was writing in her head. I told myself I wasn't going to snoop, that I'd take her at her word about the audio clip. But deep down, I knew the truth. That wasn't a performance. It was a confession hiding in plain sight. She just didn't think I'd be home early enough to hear it. After that night, nothing looked the same. Not the apartment. Not Becky. Not even me. It's strange how fast your mind can *p***nize memories when trust starts to bleed out. Every ordinary moment starts feeling like it was coded with a hidden message, one you were too blind or too stupid to notice. But now you're fluent in hindsight. The first memory that hit me was the bank account. 6 months earlier, she'd floated the idea of merging our finances. We'd been married a little over 2 years at that point, and she made it sound so innocent, so practical. "It'll make things easier," she'd said, spinning the screen of her laptop toward me with a budgeting app already loaded. "One card for everything. We can track our expenses together, finally stick to those savings goals." I nodded along like a dumb sitcom husband. Signed the paperwork. The irony? I barely used that card. Maybe once or twice for groceries. She, on the other hand, used it like it printed money. Spa charges, boutique shops with names I didn't recognize, Venmo payments labeled with only emojis, a peach, a champagne bottle, a flame. I'd ask sometimes, and she'd give me a smile and a casual wave. Group gifts. Inside jokes. Don't overthink it. Back then, I believed her. Now, those charges looked different. Not like purchases, but breadcrumbs. Then there were the visits to her mom's place. That started around the holidays last year. She'd say she was heading out for a weekend to help her mom declutter, or take her to doctor's appointments, or just have some girl time. I never questioned it. Never once asked for proof. Why would I? Her mom and I had never been particularly close. Language barrier, distance, that sort of thing. She lived 3 hours north, and we rarely saw each other. Becky always said her mom was shy and private, not big on the phone. Fine. I respected that. Only now I realized something. I'd never heard from her mom directly. Not even a call on my birthday. Not even a thank you text when we mailed her that tablet last Christmas. Every update came filtered through Becky's voice, always Becky's words. I wouldn't recognize her mom's voice if it played through the speaker right now. A month ago, Becky left town for a supposed week-long visit. I'd sent her a "have a safe trip" text with a heart emoji. She replied with a thumbs up. Just that. A tiny little digital thumb. And then, for 5 days, radio silence. No check-ins. No good nights. Not even a "hope your shift went okay." I chalked it up to bad signal in the rural area. Or maybe her mom needed extra help. Or maybe, and this one stabbed a little deeper, maybe she just didn't miss me. The distance was starting to rot something between us, and I'd been too passive to notice. Or maybe I just refused to. Another memory snapped into focus, the shampoo. It had shown up in the shower one day, tucked between her rosewater conditioner and my no-frills bottle of whatever's on sale. The bottle was dark green, sleek, with some minimalist logo and a scent like cedar and mint. Clearly a men's product. I'd assumed she bought it for me, so I used it. A few hours later, Becky came out of the bedroom, sniffed the air and froze. "You used that?" "Yeah," I said, laughing. "Thanks. Smells nice." She blinked, then forced a smile. "Oh, that wasn't for you. It was a freebie from work. Promo thing. But glad you like it." I thought that was odd at the time. Becky didn't work in marketing, and her office had nothing to do with grooming products. But I let it go. Now, I wondered, had I used his shampoo? Was I lathering up with the same scent some other guy left behind? Maybe that's why she flinched. And then there were the calls. 3 weeks ago, I woke up to her phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was 2:11 a.m. I squinted at the screen. The name said, Etsy Alerts. And the call lasted all of 4 seconds before it cut off. I whispered, "You okay?" Becky stirred and mumbled, "Spam call. It's fine." She flipped over and buried her head under the blanket. But Etsy doesn't make phone calls. Not at 2 a.m. Not at all, really. So who was calling? And why label them that way? I should have pressed her then. But part of me didn't want the answer. I was still clinging to the version of her I married. The one who left notes in my lunchbox and danced around the kitchen with oven mitts on. The version that looked at me like I was something rare and decent in a world gone too fast. But that Becky hadn't been around much lately. She'd been replaced by someone who wore new jewelry I'd never seen and claimed it was an old piece from college. Someone who took phone calls in the hallway and closed the door behind her. Someone who started showering in the evenings. A switch from her usual routine. Always emerging with her hair damp and her phone tucked under a towel. I kept telling myself I was imagining things. That maybe I was just exhausted from the job. That couples grow apart and this was just a phase. But it wasn't a phase. It was a pattern. One night, I stayed up after my shift. Just sat on the couch and stared at the dark. Becky had gone to bed hours earlier, but her phone was charging on the counter. Face down, of course. I never touched her phone. Not once in our entire marriage. That night, I nearly did. My hand hovered over it. I told myself I'd just check the notifications. Nothing invasive. Just a glance. Something to quiet the static in my head. But I didn't. I walked away. I still had that last bit of hope left. The kind that makes you a fool. And yet, even hope started to feel heavy. I tried asking gentle questions. "Hey, your mom doing okay?" "Yeah, why?" She'd respond. Always with a raised eyebrow, like I was the one being weird. "You're on your phone a lot lately?" I said once, careful not to sound accusatory. "It's work stuff. I've got deadlines. Don't start acting like I'm hiding something." She said it with a smile, but the message underneath was clear. Back off. And so I backed off. I watched from a distance as the woman I shared a bed with became someone who no longer leaned in during conversations, no longer laughed at my jokes the same way, no longer touched my arm when she passed me in the hallway. Her warmth had shifted. Not gone, just redirected. She still did the little things. Packed my lunch sometimes. Bought my favorite chips. Played my Spotify playlist while cleaning. But it all started to feel performative. Like she was doing just enough to keep the illusion afloat. Like a magician buying time before the trick collapsed. I kept thinking back to that audio clip. Marriage is just a profitable deal. I don't have to play the role to the end. What role was I in? The husband? The placeholder? The financial cosigner? The worst part? I hadn't said anything. Not a word. Not even after that morning when I caught her voice on tape. I let her dismiss it with that half smile and that casual shrug. And then I pretended it hadn't shattered something in me. Because to accuse her out loud would mean making it real. And I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Instead, I started watching her more closely. Her patterns. Her pauses. The way her eyes drifted when I asked a direct question. I studied her like someone trying to crack a safe. Trying to find the right combination to open whatever she was keeping locked away. And maybe that's when I started to change, too. The man she married wouldn't have snooped. But the man she made suspicious? He was just getting started. You can live with suspicion. You can talk yourself into circles, convincing yourself that maybe you're overthinking it, that a second toothbrush, a mislabeled call, a clipped tone, or a single strange audio file doesn't mean your life is falling apart. But when doubt gets heavy enough, it tips into certainty. That moment came on a gray Sunday morning. She was on a conference call, pacing back and forth in her office with the door closed and her AirPods in. The call was louder than usual. She was talking fast, laughing in a way I hadn't heard in a while. Too free, too animated. Not the way she sounded in her team meetings. I'd heard those tones. This was different. I knocked on the door, mostly as a courtesy, and peeked in before she could say no. "Just grabbing the laundry basket," I said. She nodded and waved me off like I was a butler. But what I really saw in the half-second before she moved her arm was her phone. The one she always used, sitting screen up on the desk. That made no sense. She was on a call. I could still hear the voice through her earbuds. But if her phone was sitting there, what was she talking on? It didn't hit me right away. I walked out, closed the door, and carried the laundry basket down the hallway. But halfway to the washer, the logic snapped into place. She was using another phone. There was a second device. And if I knew Becky, she wouldn't keep it somewhere obvious. That thought should have scared me, but it didn't. I felt something colder instead. A kind of eerie calm. Like my brain had gone into lockdown mode. Everything slowed down, sharpened. I walked quietly back down the hall and into our shared storage room. That's where we kept all the stuff that didn't have a home. Old photo frames, dead batteries, chargers, books we swore we'd reread. I opened one of the dusty plastic bins marked college stuff. Hers, not mine. I rifled through laminated notebooks, ticket stubs, old journals, a busted instant camera. Then I found it. An empty photo frame box, the kind that used to hold a collage of printed pictures. Inside was a phone. No case, just the device. She'd slid it between two pieces of foam, like she was hiding a diamond. It lit up the second I touched the screen. Passcode required. For digits. I sat on the carpet with it in my hands, heart pounding but steady. I knew it was wrong. I also knew I didn't care anymore. I tried her birthday. Nothing. Our anniversary. Nothing. Then I typed in the street number of our first apartment. Unlocked. What I saw next should have broken me. But instead, it clarified everything. There were hundreds of messages. A contact saved as J. No last name. No emoji. Just that, the single initial. Clean. Unassuming. Like they didn't want to draw attention. Their conversation went back 6 months. Scrolling through it felt like digging up a time capsule. Only this one was filled with ash. They didn't talk like two people caught in a whirlwind of passion. There were no grand declarations or messy emotions. No guilt. No shame. They were planning. Discussing logistics. Mapping out the end of our marriage like it was a real estate deal. Becky had sent a message just 3 weeks ago. If we wait until Q4, it'll look cleaner. I'll say we grew apart. No drama. I'll keep the friends who matter. Another from Jay. What about the split? Are you still aiming for 60/40ths? Becky. Yes. He won't push. He never does. And another, this one seared itself into my brain. He's convenient. Emotionally pliable. You said so yourself. I stopped breathing for a second. Convenient. Pliable. Like I was a mattress. Or a toaster. They laughed about my job. About my blue-collar guilt, as she called it. About how I still packed her lunch sometimes. There was a message she sent him during one of my night shifts. He left me a note on the fridge again. It's kind of sad. She attached a photo of it. I remember writing that note. It just said, "Be safe today. I love you." I'd drawn a smiley face. They turned it into a joke. That was when I realized this wasn't just infidelity. It was erosion. A slow, calculated dismantling of the person I thought she loved. They had a scheduled date for the split. December 1st. She had titled the thread with a pin, "Exit Plan." They were preparing for a soft separation. Her phrasing, a way to keep her reputation intact, minimize the fallout, and preserve optics. That word made my stomach turn. Optics. Our marriage, our life, was just an illusion she was maintaining until the right moment to pull the curtain. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even break the phone. I just sat there with it, reading every message like a surgeon studying a diagnosis. She wasn't confused. She wasn't tempted. She was cold, rational, surgical. I remembered every argument we'd had over the past year, how carefully she avoided saying anything real, how expertly she pivoted blame, gaslit me when I voiced concerns, played the part of the slightly impatient but loving wife. Now I saw the truth. She wasn't playing a role. She was playing me. And the kicker? I probably would have kept trying even after all this. If I hadn't found that phone, I would have stayed on the slow march toward a life she was already planning to abandon. I'd have smiled through dinner, made the coffee, washed the sheets, all while she counted down the days to leave me. But now the game had changed. I put everything back. The phone, the box, exactly how I found it. No trace. I wanted her to think I was still in the dark, still pliable. Let her believe I was clueless for a little while longer. Because I needed time. Time to figure out what came next. But one thing was already certain. Whatever mask she wore next, I'd be ready for it. And I wasn't going to play along anymore. After I found the second phone, things changed. Not just between us, but inside me. I didn't rage. I didn't accuse. I didn't even confront her. Instead, I did what she never expected. I kept quiet. I let her believe I was still the same man. Slow to anger, quicker to compromise. Emotionally pliable, like they'd said. Every smile I gave her now was rehearsed. Every nod, every love you too. A performance. And I could tell it unsettled her. Becky was used to reading me like a traffic light. But now I was static. Blank. A channel she couldn't tune into anymore. But silence wasn't enough. I needed context. I needed to know if this version of her, the one plotting exit strategies and mocking me behind my back, had always been there. Or if I had missed the transformation. Maybe she'd changed. Or maybe she'd always been this way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. Either way, I needed someone who had. That's when I remembered Josh. She mentioned him once, maybe twice, early in our relationship. An old college friend, she said vaguely. The kind of guy who helped her move dorms and drove her to the airport once. I'd asked casually if they'd ever dated, and she smiled and said, "No, just a friend." Josh was a little too clingy for my taste. That had stuck with me, not because of what she said, but how she said it. Like his affection had annoyed her. Like he'd offered something real, and she'd rolled her eyes at it. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Everyone has a past. But now I wondered. So I searched his name. Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Took less than 10 minutes to find him. People leave digital trails wider than they think. His profile was modest. A couple of vet school photos, a job at a clinic 3 towns over, a picture of a dog with one eye and a grin that looked surgically attached. I stared at the profile picture for a long time before hitting message. "Hey, this might be weird, but I think you used to know Becky C. From college. I'm her husband, just looking to understand a few things. If you're willing to talk, I'd appreciate it." He replied an hour later. "If you're with her now, you should know the truth. I'll tell you. No fluff. No hesitation." We met the next afternoon in the parking lot behind a strip mall. Not exactly cinematic, but safe, neutral, forgettable. He looked older than I expected. Thinner, worn down, like someone who had lived just long enough to regret how much he'd trusted people. He stepped out of his car holding a coffee cup, his hands slightly trembling. Not from fear, I realized, but from something deeper. Old damage. "Mark?" he asked. I nodded. "I wasn't sure you'd actually show," he said. "I almost didn't," I replied. Guess I wasn't ready to admit I needed answers. Josh leaned against the hood of his car and stared out toward the trees behind the lot. "You want the short version or the real one? Give me the one you've been waiting to say out loud," I said. He laughed, but not kindly. "She left me 2 days after we signed the mortgage," he said. 2 days. The ink wasn't even dry. I blinked. You two bought a house? He nodded. Technically, yes. She convinced me it was smart. Said renting was a waste, and we were future-proofing our life. I was in love. Thought I hit the jackpot. She was beautiful, smart, decisive. She made me feel like the world was finally coming together. He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. Then on Monday, I came home from work, and the place was empty. No note, no calls, just gone. My stomach sank. And she left your name on the mortgage? Of course, he said. But within the week, she had filed for removal of obligation. Apparently, she never switched over some of the paperwork. Legal technicality. I got stuck with it all. Nearly tanked my credit. Did she say anything? Later? He looked at me then, really looked at me. She sent one text, he said. One. Said, and I quote, "Marriage is a deal. Don't take it personal." I went cold. That phrase. Almost word for word. He saw the recognition on my face and nodded. Yeah, he said. Sounds like she hasn't changed. I told him everything. Or at least the highlights. The fake podcast clip. The second phone. The messages. The planned exit. Josh didn't look surprised. Hurt maybe, but not shocked. She doesn't believe in relationships, he said finally. She believes in outcomes, appearances, positioning. The idea of love is just a tool for her, a currency. She invests when there's value and cashes out when the numbers drop. I stayed quiet, let his words settle. You know what's wild? He added. Even after all that, I missed her. For months. I thought maybe she'd had a breakdown or a crisis or cold feet. But nah, she was just done. Clean cut. Like I'd been a project that reached completion. That hit me harder than anything. Because I knew exactly what he meant. I wasn't dealing with betrayal fueled by passion or weakness. I was dealing with calculation. A strategy. She didn't just fall out of love. She phased out of it like it was part of some quarterly performance review. What did you do after? I asked. Josh shrugged. Moved in with my brother. Took up therapy. Drank too much. Eventually, I stopped asking why. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folded paper. This was from her, he said. A list of things she wanted in a partner. Found it tucked into a book after she left. I don't know why I kept it. He handed it to me, then turned to go. I hope you get out before she finishes writing your ending too, he said. Then he left. I stood in that parking lot for a long time, just staring at the list. It was bullet-pointed, written in her tight, neat handwriting. Must be emotionally consistent, financially secure, low-drama family, predictable work schedule, minimal past baggage, non-confrontational, strong moral compass, socially presentable. It read like a resume checklist, and I realized I matched almost every item. Not because we were compatible, because I fit her mold. She didn't marry me for love. She recruited me, and now that I'd served my purpose, she was preparing to cut ties before any emotional liability showed up on her personal balance sheet. As I drove home, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was resolve. Becky thought she was the only one capable of playing the long game. She was wrong. By the time I got home from meeting Josh, my hands had stopped shaking. That alone told me something had changed. I wasn't spiraling anymore. I wasn't second-guessing. I wasn't looking for signs. Because now I had something better than signs. I had confirmation. Not just from messages, not just from another man's story, but from the pattern. From her. And once you understand the pattern, you stop hoping the outcome will change. You start preparing for it. So that night, while Becky slept in the same bed beside me, breathing like nothing in her life was crumbling, I began my quiet exit. The first step was the joint account. She had pushed for it, used it, relied on it. It was her access point, her safety net. So I logged in, quietly, and moved our entire savings into my private account. I left just enough to avoid suspicion. A few hundred. Enough for groceries and a gas fill-up. Then I froze the account. Next was tech. She'd always depended on me for digital life, Wi-Fi settings, subscriptions, backups, passwords. She once joked that if I disappeared, she'd be locked out of everything like a forgotten SIM. So I started with the basics, changed the Netflix password, then Hulu, then Spotify, Google Drive, the cloud storage she used for photos and docs, all of it. I removed her devices from the family sharing plan. I set up two-factor authentication on every account and rerouted the codes to a number only I used now. Then I backed up the second phone. I waited until she went out the next afternoon to grab coffee with Mia, and I pulled the burner from the frame box again. This time, I uploaded the entire thread between her and Jay into a private cloud folder, encrypted it, then emailed the folder to myself, my lawyer friend Ryan, and a burner Gmail I created just for this. Call it paranoia, call it *LL. But I wasn't going to be blindsided. Not by someone who had rehearsed betrayal like it was a monologue. That night I called Ryan. We hadn't talked much in the last few years. Life had gotten in the way. But we grew up together. Played baseball in high school. He was the kind of guy who wore suits now, but still said bro with a straight face. When he picked up, I didn't ease into it. I need to protect myself, I said. He paused. You okay? No, but I will be. He cleared his throat. Prenup? No prenup. Okay. You got proof of misconduct? Plenty. Infidelity? Financial manipulation. Emotional coercion. Hidden communications. A full exit plan detailed in writing. He exhaled through his teeth. Damn. Can you draft a separation agreement? One that states if deception is proven, everything reverts to me, property, assets, rights? I can. But don't serve it yet. Wait for her move. I'm not serving it, I said. I'm placing it. He went quiet. I told him the idea. He laughed. That's cold, man. It's calculated, I replied. Just like her. He emailed the draft the next day. I printed it, sealed it in a plain manila envelope and slid it into her makeup drawer, the one she opened every morning without fail. On the cover, in my handwriting, just sign it. No explanation. No threat. Just a line. I didn't check the drawer after that. I didn't mention it. I didn't watch her for a reaction. I wanted to see which version of her I'd get next. Because there were always versions. Becky wore personas like layers. Sometimes the warm wife. Affectionate, effortless, sunlit. Sometimes the career strategist, cool, rational, no nonsense. Sometimes the innocent victim, confused by conflict, begging for peace she never really worked for. I'd seen them all. But I had a feeling something new was coming. And I was right. 3 days later, an invitation showed up, hand-delivered in an envelope with gold foil trim. No joke. Inside was a printed card. Honesty Night. An int asterisk mate evening of vulnerability, healing, and connection. Hosted by Becky. Dress code. White, beige, or neutral tones. Location. The loft. Time. 7 p.m. I stared at it for a long time. This wasn't guilt. This wasn't repentance. This was image control. A rebrand. I showed up 15 minutes early. The place was decked out like some curated Pinterest fantasy. Fairy lights strung along the ceiling beams. Eucalyptus candles burning at every corner. A makeshift photo wall with Polaroids of her with friends from different stages of life. Music hummed softly from a speaker. Something acoustic and self-serious. She floated around the room in a white satin jumpsuit, barefoot, clutching a glass of Prosecco like a TED speaker before their big moment. People trickled in, friends from work, some from her yoga group, 2 ex-roommates, even her old boss. Everyone wore the right palette. Everyone smiled too wide. Everyone looked like they'd been handpicked to be part of the show. At exactly 7:30, she dimmed the lights, clinked her glass with a fork, and stepped onto the small rug in the center of the loft like it was a stage. Thank you all for coming, she said. Her voice was calm, low, reverent, like a wellness coach preparing to confess something profound. She talked about growth, about rediscovery, about how being in a long-term partnership sometimes makes you forget who you were before you were a couple. She sprinkled buzzwords like mindfulness, reclamation, identity work. Then she said it. I've made mistakes, but those mistakes were symptoms. Not of weakness, but of misalignment. The room nodded. I didn't. She looked at me once, halfway through the speech. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. Just for a second. But it was there. And when she finished, when the crowd clapped gently and the music came back up and the servers began handing out lavender cocktails, I stepped forward. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. I walked to the center of the rug and took the mic from her hand. And I said, sometimes the only thing you rediscover is someone else's phone, and then everything becomes clear. Silence. Dead silence. No gasps. No protests. Just this eerie, breathless pause. Like someone had cut the soundtrack. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Her mouth opened slightly, like she was about to improvise. But no words came. I handed the mic to the server. And I left. Didn't run. Didn't storm. Just walked down the stairs and out into the night air. Cool and clean and finally real. Behind me, I knew the machine was stalling. Because that wasn't in the script. And for once, Becky didn't have a backup plan. 3 days later, she posted a photo from Honesty Night. All smiles, white jumpsuit glowing, captioned, "Healing looks good on me." Friends flooded the comments with heart emojis. But I knew the truth. Behind the candles and photo booths was silence. She never addressed what I said. No denial, no apology, just a polished image, curated for likes. It wasn't healing. It was hiding. She didn't win. She just pivoted. A week later, I got a letter. No envelope, just the photo of us in Utah. On the back, she wrote, "You ruined everything too early." She thought I'd follow the script. But I moved, rented a small place, took a remote job, started learning guitar again. The one she once called a teenage whim. I didn't answer her message. I didn't need to. I wasn't part of her play anymore. And if someone tries again, I'll leave before the curtain ever rises.